Good evening, everyone. It's meteorologist Joe Rayo to my left and Joe Chaffee here to Rayo's right.
Look at your
And
beautiful air
and
conditioning.
we are the Joe and Joe Weather Show, complete with background audio. You're not opening.
Only for a split second,
All
Joe.
right, well, that's all right.
Yeah.
So here we are on a Tuesday. Every time we have a 3-day weekend, I think that the day when that everybody goes back to normalcy feels like a Monday, but it is a Tuesday, the 8th of September, 2020, 7:02 Eastern Time. And we've got this summer winter storm going on in the Rockies. I actually have a live cam that Scott Briller sent me the link to, and I'm going to bring it up on the screen. This is an Earth Cam video. So we thank them wholeheartedly for allowing us to put it up on the screen. Now, you're not going to be able, this is downtown Denver, and you have to look really, really close. Every once in a while, there's some snowflakes that come right in front of the campus. So, whatever snow is going on in the downtown is very, very light. Oh, there, one just kind of went by there. Uh,
An
very,
exceptionally large flake.
yes. But it is snowing heavily, Joe, outside. This is the Denver cam on Earth Cam, by the way. It is snowing heavily just to the west of Denver in the mountains. Some of the observations, and I'll pull up the current surface map up there with the temperatures and the obs. And I'm using the map that has the actual topography. So if you're not, Denver's almost 66,000 feet up, but the mountains to the west of Denver go much higher. You've got elevations there of 9 and 10,000 feet. Cottonwood Pass, for example, which is God, a fairly solid distance west of Denver, is 25 with a quarter of a mile in heavy snow, an east wind at 16, no gusties there, but there's a station here, Berthoud Pass. Ruthless Goat is watching this. He'll correct me if I'm mispronouncing it. Berthoud Pass, 10 above. Now they're 12,477 feet up.
That'll do
Okay.
it.
10 degrees. Uh, East southeast at 33, gusting to 46. So the wind chill is minus 13. They don't have any precip there. They said the max gust that they had was 45 knots. Out just to the west, Dow Junction, 26, 25, 96% humidity. There's no visibility here. I'm trying to find that one style. Here it is, Leadville. Leadville Lake County Airport, 21, 18 on the dew point, 9,928 feet above sea level. 2118, a quarter of a mile in heavy snow and ice fog. So they're putting it down in a big way just to the west of Denver, and a lot of spots are going to see their snows tonight when they drop down below freezing. I think that was the big problem today. I was looking at the obs. It's been Denver's been sitting at around 33, 34 for much of the day. Now they're down to 32. So once the sun sets and the precip that falls at night, I imagine there's probably going to be some sticking going on, especially on colder surfaces. But still, it's the 8th of September, for God's sake. We haven't even gotten to the autumnal equinox, and we're dealing with all of this.
Coming off of course, a few days with temperatures in the 90s and even near to 100.
Well, yeah, Saturday it was 101 there. Casper, Wyoming. Let's see if the map's going to be nice and plot the obs. It did, and then it unplotted them. There you go. Casper, Wyoming is 32, east northeast at 14, gusting to 22, but it's not doing like there's no precip going on there. So most of the precip is in Colorado, and Ruthless Goat also said that at least where he is in Loveland, which is north of Denver, uh, it was not sticking. So a busy night for these folks, and you'll notice on the watches and mornings map, by the way, it's loaded again. You've got winter storm warnings, southern Wyoming, much of central and western Colorado. Winter weather advisories are up for Denver. And pretty soon they're not going to have winter weather advisories anymore because they're getting rid of them. and even a few winter storm warnings extending down into parts of New Mexico. Very impressive. And Joe, in the meantime, here in the very boring East, things are nice and quiet. Had a pretty nice day today. A little more humid, but we didn't get much above the low and mid 70s out my way.
Well, we actually were a little bit further inland than you are, Joe, and I believe we peaked here in Putnam County at around 85 this afternoon. But you're right, it was a bit more humid, but still it was not uncomfortable. It was not oppressive or, oh my God, I got to get back inside because it's much cooler with the air conditioning. It wasn't anything like that, but you did notice that the change in humidity made it feel a little bit more uncomfortable as compared to the last few days. And we've had a stretch, and we really needed it, of dry weather. Again, July and August were wetter than normal. And now, as we've moved into September, it's nice to put together more than just a day or two consecutive of dry days. And looks like our next chance for any wetness around here may not come until Thursday.
Right. Well, some of that ocean moisture is backing northwestward, which we're going to talk about. Let's just carry through this this early. I don't know how you describe it. This late. I've been calling it the summer winter storm. It's not. I mean, it's almost ludicrous to say it's an early winter storm because it's still summertime, for God's
Right,
sake.
right.
But this all plays out tonight, and you see the GFS model with snows in eastern Colorado overnight, and they're still hanging around tomorrow morning, pushing down into New Mexico. You've got rain into Kansas and some heavy rains into Texas, but then this gradually does finally wind down, and weather conditions will start. There's still some lingering precip in the mountains, even into Thursday, before it finally ultimately disappears. But I got to show you, this impressed me, Joe. Look at this trough on the satellite. A couple of things of note. First off, you could see the rotation of the upper low so clearly back on the western edge of that long deck of clouds that runs from there all the way northeast to upstate New York, well up into upstate New York and up the St. Lawrence Valley. But the deep trough driving southward, the the smoke. Remember yesterday we could clearly see the smoke that was coming out from the wildfires out in the west, spreading all the way into Oklahoma and parts of Kansas and Texas. The upper trough is actually driven southward. Look how sharp it is. It's all the way down here. So all the smoke has been basically suppressed further to the south. It has actually driven it into Baja California, and into parts of Mexico. So the whole area is getting pushed southward before it turns northeastward ahead of the deep trough. But very all this incredible dry air that's coming down, that's in Washington, Oregon, down into Nevada, and on the back side of all of this, and of course the front side has got all this moisture that's trailing up well to our north and west.
Right, and because of the positioning of that trough, that's why this cold front approaching from the north and west is not going to be moving through anytime soon. It will be eventually getting in here, but not for another 48 hours. Till then, it looks like it'll be dry tonight, dry tomorrow, although maybe a few more clouds, and then some of that moisture possibly coming in from the ocean,
Right, this
combining
stuff
with
down
that broken
here,
trough, yeah,
all
bringing us
that
into
stuff down
colder
here.
weather.
Whoops. How did I do that? I did something.
I don't know. What did you do?
I don't know. There it goes. Yeah, that's the moisture you're talking about. It's backing in from off the ocean, and it looks like it may try and creep northward, maybe getting here late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning, and we might have to deal with it on and off during the day Thursday. I'm not so sure yet how that's going to play out.
No, I don't think. That's going to be a combination of two things. Again, the onshore moisture coming in from the ocean, and again that approaching trough from the northwest. The onshore moisture will be mostly in the form of spotty light rain, and if we get any of the moisture from the trough, it would be more of a showery nature, and that probably wouldn't come until later on Thursday or Thursday night. Maybe even a rumble of thunder. Then hopefully a concentrated zone of high pressure will push all of this out of here, allowing for some dry weather and some nice weather to return for Friday and Saturday. We would like Saturday and Sunday, but it looks like the
It's
timing
going
will
to
be
be
awfully
Friday
bad
and
again.
Saturday. I agree with you. Take a
Yeah,
look. Let's go back to the summer winter storm here. Look at some of these snow amounts that are being generated here. This is obviously in the mountains of Colorado. We've got a 14 print near Colorado Springs, and I'm gonna see if I make sure I got the town. Usually they got the town names on them, but I lost Denver here. Uh, Denver was there. He is. Denver's got a 5 print, so we'll see what sticks overnight. But you go down southwest into the southern part of the state. There's some 2 foot plus amounts that are going to be generated out of this, and certainly judging from those observations that we saw, that we just saw. That probably wouldn't be a big shock when you're talking about elevations of 10,000 feet or higher getting clobbered. But even in some of the lower elevations of 5, 6, 7,000 feet, are going to pick up accumulating snows, and then this will go down in the record books for some areas. And actually, for Denver, it's not even the earliest snow accumulating snowfall ever. This is going to be the third earliest. But I'm sure for some of these areas, it will be, considering the variability of something that happens at this time of year. Some of these places are seeing their earliest snows that they have ever seen. And here's a look from the Denver Weather Service office. It's 33. This is I'm not sure if that's Buckley Airport, but they had the snow map. I don't know what I did with it. I think there it is. This is their snowfall forecast map in Colorado, their latest one on their weather story. And you can go to their website if you want to see more of this. But you see where they have their heavy snow amounts. They have Denver in that 4 to 6 range. Boulder at 6 to 8. Fort Collins 4 to 6. And then lesser amounts as you go east, higher amounts as you go south and southwest. Lake George, not Lake George, New York, folks. Lake George, Colorado, 8 to 12. Colorado Springs, 6 to 8. You get the idea. This is for the snow lovers, it is definitely the first early season cheap thrill. And here it is on WPC's forecast maps, which I've got looped. You see where all rain is, and you see what Joe's talking about here. This sort of stalled out frontal boundary in western New York doesn't start moving again until we get to Wednesday night, Thursday. And then also notice how the WPC actually brings in rain from the southeast to the northwest and starts to lift it northward, because there's another stalled frontal boundary with a little weak surface low off the coast that is going to push back moisture to the northwest. Always tricky with onshore flows like this, Joe. You could get a day like today where you've got those tropical like looking skies and sunshine through the clouds, and then you could get into a situation where all of a sudden it's overcast and it's in the 70s, and you've got these patches of rain and showers that are coming in from off the water. So something to bear in mind. I think we'll get away with tomorrow, although rain may get actually late tomorrow afternoon, might make it as far north as southern New Jersey, and definitely down into Virginia and North Carolina. But I think for Thursday, it is going to creep up here.
Right. And so it's going to be kind of again, not a convective type precipitation pattern. It'll be more of that kind of steady, light, drizzly or light rain type situation. Then, if that cold front, and indeed it looks like it will eventually get in here by later on Thursday, that will probably generate more of a showery type of precipitation pattern, and maybe even a rumble or two of thunder. Nothing severe, nothing that we need to be too concerned about. And then hopefully high pressure getting heavy enough and strong enough to push that entire mess to our south and open the door for a couple of dry days. The humidity being drained out of the atmosphere, I think, on Friday. And Saturday, most definitely, looks like the better of the 2 weekend days coming up.
By the way, I just for laughs, I pulled up the 72-hour probability of at least 8 inches of snow, and the darkest blue is 40%. The lightest blue is between 70 and 80%. So you see where this is all, how this is all going to wind up out there. So you snow lovers that are out in Colorado, enjoy yourselves for this early season gift. Now, I want to go back, Joe. Let's focus on our weather here in the east, which is relatively quiet, except for what's going on this evening with these clouds that are down in Virginia, North Carolina. There's a lot of disturbed weather that is sitting off the southeast coast. It's very disorganized. Obviously, there's nothing, here that warrants attention with regards to tropical storm formation anytime soon. There is going to be a weak low of some kind that's going to form in this mess. But at least so far, in terms of what we're seeing convectively, a lot of the showers and storms are spread out all over the place. So I'm going to think that the odds are going to be rather long for something tropical to develop. Although it's not impossible that you could get a low to spin up and maybe even a tropical depression to form before maybe it moves inland into North Carolina sometime on Thursday. But in the meantime, that tropical moisture there is trying to push northward. It has having no success today. Obviously, it may have a little more success for tomorrow, pushing into southern New Jersey. But then you get this to move. It creeps up this way on Thursday, and then you get, of course, here's your front to the north. That starts to come into play, and we might get a little bit of precip from that. Doesn't look like a big rainmaker, as you said.
And as you just alluded to, there is that little something off the U.S. coastline, which may get tropical characteristics and may even, dare I say, become a tropical depression or even a tropical storm. We've already seen that happen once this year. We had Kyle, which the day before only had a 20% chance of development, and all of a sudden, blink your eyes and boom, we have a tropical system. So who's to say that that system that we're watching for the latter part of this week off the U.S. coastline might actually become the next tropical system? That would be the S storm. That would be, I believe, Sally. So we'll see how that all pans out. Does not look like a major threat, but it seems like every time you turn around, Joe, there's some kind of a tropical disturbance that's developing, and most likely, it looks like in the next couple of weeks, we're going to run through all the names and start on the Greek alphabet.
I think you're right. I think alpha, beta, gamma, uh, alpha, beta, gamma. What's the next one after that?
I think
Delta?
epsilon,
No,
delta,
delta.
delta, delta,
Delta,
and epsilon.
epsilon,
Yeah,
eta, theta.
yeah.
Oh, good lord. So on the radar this evening, you see some of those showers that are coming on shore in North Carolina. Some of them are actually quite heavy that are backing in northwestward, and they extend down to the Georgia coast and even over Florida. Some scattered shower and thunderstorm activity there. Getting a lot of shower and storm activity in Texas. And on up into Oklahoma and parts of Kansas. Now, this is, of course, is in response to the developing low to the north. And there's your snow in Colorado that is come with that upper trough, and that upper low actually shows up quite well, Joe. You can see the rotation here on the radar. The radar echoes are turning cyclonically there back into eastern Utah. So there's a nice little upper low there. That's going to be the mechanism that generates the heavier snows out in that part of the country. And the West Coast, of course, pretty dry. Unfortunately, with all those fires, they could use a nice deep trough with a big soaking rain, but that doesn't seem likely to happen. Not anytime soon, anyway.
No, no, they're bone dry, and it looks like it's going to be a while before they get any kind of significant moisture.
That is correct. Surface map tonight. We've got still have this sort of little skinny ridge that's a little area of high pressure in between the frontal zone that is stalled out to our east and southeast, and that extends down to off the Georgia coast. Then you've got this stalled frontal zone in upstate New York and back through southern Michigan, and then that snakes down through Missouri and Oklahoma. It's in the 80s. It's in the upper 80s to the east of the front, Joe. It's in the 40s, 30s, and 20s to the west of the front. And there's your low, the surface low that's being plotted here by WPC at 18Z. Let's see if the 21Z should be up there too, and we'll get that going. Yes, indeed. We got the 21Z map, 1006 low being analyzed in west central Colorado, and another one down in northeastern New Mexico. The big high to the north with all the Canadian cold air pressing southward. A month from now, a month from now, this will sink in a bit more. If you're in October and you see this stuff, it's a little less weird. I'm just having a tough time trying to handle all this.
Well, somebody asked me yesterday what, in my memory, and I've been doing this now as the same as you for a very long time, what was the earliest snowfall that I could remember in our part of the country? And I remember October 4th, 1987. It actually came on a weekend where parts of the Hudson Valley, local Hudson Valley, picked up like a trace of snow. But meanwhile, up in the higher terrain areas, for example, the Berkshires, there was as much as 10 to 20 inches of snow on the fourth day of October in 1987. And all kinds of people who were planning, the leaf peepers, for example, who were planning on that weekend to look at the fall foliage, instead ended up looking at a snowstorm, which was actually knocking down trees and breaking limbs and branches because of the heavy weight of the snow on top of the trees, which were still in leaf. But to me, that's in this part of the country in the Northeast. That's about the earliest I could remember is October 4th, which I guess is the analogy to what's happening out in the Rockies right now for the first week of September.
You got to have an incredibly deep upper low to drop down from Canada in order to pull that off that early,
Right.
and it's improbable to have it now, but Uh, we've seen it happen at the latter part of September. We've certainly seen it happen during the month of October and beyond. But that's the West. The cold air starts. Most winters get underway. The first places that usually get anything is that part of the country, the western part of the U.S. And the East doesn't really get into it very much until you start to get into November, and then you push deeper into the month of November. You start to see the colder places in New England and upstate New York and so on. But to see something that anomalous, I don't think you. I mean, you never would be. You could almost say it's virtually impossible. I hate to say that because as soon as I say it, tomorrow it's going to show up on some long range map. But I mean, it's virtually impossible to see it this early. But a month from now, yeah, if you have everything, if you have a really strong upper low and deep trough in the eastern part of the U.S., a really anomalous cold air mass just plunging southward, then you might be able to pull it off.
Well, and you think about the up here now in 2011, we had a pre-Halloween snowstorm, which right here where I live dropped about 14 inches of heavy wet snow in this area. It
Yeah,
caused a lot of damage to the trees. But think about this, Joe. That still ended up coming about almost 4 weeks later than the storm that I just mentioned in early October of 1987. So, that seems to be, I think, the about you talk about pushing the envelope for an early snowfall. The first, the fourth of October seems to be it as far as
and we seem to
significant
we
snowfall.
see them in years where there are strong El Ninos or strong La Ninas, uh, super strong El Ninos or La Ninas, because I believe
Right.
11 and 12, that was the biggest snow of the whole winter. Was
Yeah.
the October snows. It wasn't
Right.
anything even remotely close after that. It was one
Right.
of those non-winters
Right.
that year. So, in fact, I remember that particular year because I drove up in the beginning of January for the new. I think it was, yeah, it was 2000.
That'd be
Uh,
2012.
2000 January of early January 2012. I drove up to New Hampshire for the New Hampshire primary in the presidential election of 2012 because my daughter was working for CBS at the time and they were covering it. So I went up there with her and got a freebie yeah, on CBS's dime.
Huh.
Anyway, uh, there was no snow on the ground in New Hampshire in that part, nothing. And in fact, while I was there, we had a snow shower that lasted all of about 5 minutes that put down enough snow to fill in the crack on the concrete in the sidewalk. Okay,
Wow.
that's all the snow that I saw. In fact, it hardly snowed up there through November, December. The mountains were bare. I mean, you had to really go up into virtually the higher parts of Mount Washington to find any snow on the ground. The ski resorts were begging for snow, and it just didn't happen. So figures the year I went up there on at the beginning of January, and there's not a flake or an ice pellet to be found. But that's a snow lover's luck.
Yeah, and you think about the last snow that we had here was on the 9th of May,
Right,
and in 1977, we also had snow fall on the 9th of
9th of
May. And of
May.
course, you remember what the winter was like the following winter, the winter of 77, 78. We got walloped
Yep.
with significant snowfall. Not to say that's going to happen again this year,
No, there's no real
but
connection.
but
It should be that easy.
yes,
All
it
right, so
should.
let's bring the maps back up and take a look at the forecast rainfall amounts for the next 7 days on WPC. Actually, Joe, WPC has a stripe of an inch and a half of rain across central New Jersey, Long Island, and I'm guessing that they're getting that. Well, some of that is from Thursday, and some of that is also probably from the next weather front on Sunday. But I'm wondering whether they're thinking that perhaps some of this Atlantic moisture could get involved and might generate, because the NAM model, and to a lesser extent some of the others, was sort of generating a very narrow band of heavy rain, maybe with some kind of coastal front that backs or inverted trough that backs northwestward, and there'll be a narrow strip that's just north and west of that inverted trough that could wind up getting some heavy rain. Maybe that's what that stripe is.
Right. I'm looking at the chat board, Joe. I'm looking at your map, of course, but on the chat board, Michael Azera points out, and he's absolutely right. October 10th, 1979 was another rare early snowstorm in the New York, New Jersey area. In fact, I believe they had snow falling in the Baltimore area. They were playing the World Series that year in Baltimore, and they had snow sighted there on the 10th of October. And I know that the late Jerry Thaler, the climatologist who for many, many years served the Hudson Valley, had a piece in the New York Times writing about that unusually early snowfall. I remember that too. That was the 10th of October. That was about a week after that crazy October 4th event from 1987. But yeah, it happens every once in a great while in this part of the country. You do get October snowfalls, and that was just another example of that.
The upper air for going forward, and I thought that European was crazy last week trying to drop a wrapped up cutoff low down into Arizona and Utah, and sure enough, it's right. There's a wrapped up upper low, and of course that's uh, causing the snowstorm. You see the northern part of the jet stream is to the north of southern New England and the northeast, and you've got this upper high. It's on the edge of your screen here on the right, and the southeast flow in the upper atmosphere that's going from offshore into the southeastern part of the United States. So it's somewhere in here that we'll just keep our eye on that disturbed weather in case a low decides to do something. But there's a short wave that is swinging down through southern Canada, Lake Winnipeg. That's going to swing eastward, and that'll finally push this front, the front that Joe mentioned earlier, that's hung up in western New York and extends back down through the lower lakes. It's stalled for now, but it should move on through once that short wave plays out, and then the upper low in the southwest just basically lifts up towards the Great Lakes. We've got another shortwave trough that comes into the east, maybe pushes the front through here on Sunday. After that, Joe, we kind of go into a bit of a ridge position for the middle part of next week for just a day or two. And then the next trough tries to drop down, although I don't have the entire run yet. The GFS is running behind tonight, but uh, we're, we seem to be we're in this we get into these temporary stall positions, but we are getting weather fronts to move on through. It's not like we're getting a big ridge building in the in the east that's sitting there for a week at a time and we're baking away. That's not going to I don't that's not going to happen in my view.
No, it's not. I don't. I agree with you 100%. Does not look like it's going to take form or take place. But still, you think about the nice weather we've had for the holiday weekend, the nice weather we had yesterday and today. Hopefully, we'll be able to squeeze out one more dry day tomorrow before maybe some moisture backs in from the ocean on Wednesday night and Thursday. The front dropping on down from the north later Thursday, and we'll get a little bit wet. And then we'll have two more nice dry days for Friday and Saturday, and then we'll go into another possibly prolonged wet spell for Sunday into the early part of next week.
So running the surface map, you see that ocean moisture just kind of it comes and goes, uh, flares up in the afternoon and evening, then dies out a bit during the overnight, and then flares up again. But this is Thursday afternoon. You see those showers from southern New England down to about Long Island into the evening, and then the front does push through. High pressure builds in from Lake Huron, and then moves into New England. And the key for Friday and Saturday is that high, Joe, pressing down just far enough south so that the frontal boundary is pushed down far enough south. And I think it will be that we'll get at least some dry air in here and have 2 decent days for Friday and Saturday. But then here comes the next weather front with the next short wave and showing some showers and maybe even a rumble of thunder or two on Sunday as the weather front goes by. Might be a warm front that'll push up ahead of it, so that'll make it uh, maybe gloomy for Saturday night into the first part of Sunday. Then we'll get into those showers, and then there's a nice high that comes in, another one that goes up to our north with an onshore flow for the middle part of next week. And then here comes the next weather front that approaches. So it's basically just one after another. Very progressive pattern. Weather systems moving along from west to east. Nothing really intense, nothing really strong. Just basic cold fronts, highs going out, onshore flow. Nothing really totally unusual here.
I just realized, Joe, and it's not that I just realized it at this moment, but I just, as a reminder, considering that we're calling for nice weather here to return by Friday, and of course, Friday will be I can't even believe I'm saying this, the 19th anniversary of 9/11,
Yes.
2001. And we all remember how beautiful the weather was on that day. And we always hope that the weather is nice for all of the outdoor ceremonies that begin first thing in the morning on that day. And it looks like that will be the case. We have had, I think, out of the 19 years or the 18 previous years since that horrible day, and of course that day was beautiful in 2001. We've only had like one or two unsettled or dreary or cloudy days. Most every time that we've come around to September 11th since 2001, the weather has always turned out to be very nice, and it looks like it will turn out to be that way too, with all of the unsettled weather being left behind from Thursday and Thursday night. By Friday, drier air, less humid air moving in, fair skies, sunshine, and temperatures still on the warm side, mostly in the 80s, and then cooling back into the 70s for the start of the upcoming weekend on Saturday.
We are going to take a look at the tropics, and I'm going to bring up the tropical satellite here. We're going to switch over to the Atlantic view. We have our two tropical storms, Paulette. Hang on, folks. Let's get it here. And here we go. It's loading up. We've got Paulette and Rene. And I have to tell you, Paulette looks certainly more impressive than Rene does. The Hurricane Center was kind of playing up the idea that Rene is going to wind up being the stronger of the two, but I'm starting to wonder, looking at the satellite, Rene looks like there's two little balls of convection here. It's just finally moving away from the Cabo Verde Islands. Here's Paulette, and Paulette has been fighting some southwest shear, but in spite of the shear, it actually was able to strengthen today. Top winds there 65 miles an hour. But I also want to point out that the Hurricane Center is also already talking about this wave that we mentioned yesterday that's going to be coming off the African coast later tomorrow night, early Thursday, and they already have it as a 70% chance of this becoming a tropical depression or a tropical storm in the next 5 days. And they're still speaking with regards to all this disturbed weather that is off the southeast coast. as a 40% chance that this could develop into a tropical depression or a tropical storm. But I have to tell you, Joe, the thing we struggled with yesterday in terms of the tropics. If you're thinking that today we have it all, if you folks think that we have it all figured out as far as how these storms are going to play, we don't. It is amazing how every single run is doing something different with regards to how these storms are interacting with each other. One of the big issue, I think, Mr. Rayo, is the fact that there's just too much going on. There are too many of these systems. They're too close together. You don't know how they're going to interact with each other. You see some runs that wipe out one storm and favor the other. Then on the next run, they do the reverse. And then they've been doing all sorts of weird things with loops and everything else. So I am still just kind of being Switzerland here when it comes to what's going to happen in the long range, because quite frankly, I really don't know. I think this is a very difficult puzzle to decipher. And here on this particular run, look at this. This is kind of fun. You take Rene and Paulette. Paulette and Rene both start moving northward. Rene goes to the right, Paulette turns to the left. I mean, they did at the same time. And then you go to the south of the two of them, and there's two others, one in between and another one to the right of that.
Joe, I'm thinking about, let's say we're looking at like two supercomputers that are being fed the data and then rapidly trying to come up with some kind of a solution as to where all of these tropical disturbances are going. You know what immediately comes to mind? The episode of I Love Lucy, the candy factory.
Yeah, exactly.
Where you have speed it up a little.
Speed, exactly.
It's the same thing with the computers. The computers, you're right. There's just too much happening for these computers, even in their super way of doing calculations, to come up with some kind of a reasonable solution to all of this, much beyond 3 or 4 days, and you're asking to go like 5, 10, 15 days out. It's ridiculous. You have to just play it by ear and go day by day and see how things pan out.
Sure, and let's throw in the fact that there's some kind of upper low that's south of the Azores that's part of this equation. You've got this strong jet that runs across the North Atlantic. So things are just flying along from west to east. There's no blocking in the atmosphere. So that is with these weather systems moving along, short waves are going to be interacting in one form or another. Highs are coming and going. They strengthen off the Atlantic coast, and then they weaken. So the timing of that is different on every run. And again, you look at the Atlantic. The Atlantic itself is a mess through all of this. And again, we only have out till about day 8 and 9, which has, I guess, what is going to be Sally at this point, somewhere east northeast of the Leeward Islands. But as I said earlier,
unless that system off the mid-Atlantic coast decides to suddenly pop up,
which would probably complicate matters even further. I think on the European today, which was even sillier. Let me just bring it up, because the European had, I believe, in one of the maps, it was on day 9 or day 10 or on both. There were 5 systems that I could count in play. Now here's another situation here where the European has got 4 on the map by Sunday, all out in the ocean, and then the lead one, I guess the one that moves off the African coast on Thursday, I guess that's the one, moves westward into the Caribbean and moves over the Dominican Republic and Cuba by the time we get to day 10, with another low that's sitting well northeast of the leewards, still another one that's west of the Cabo Verde Islands. And oddly enough, Joe, we've had, we're almost out of names, and yet in terms of the number of hurricanes, we've only had 3. Only 3 of these systems have become hurricanes.
They've all been, the tropical cyclones have either been, tropical storms or tropical depressions. They've not really wound up to become the full-fledged hurricanes. But the hurricanes that we have had have been rather significant. So There you
Hannah,
go.
Laura, and Nana. Nana, by the way, I forgot to mention this a couple of days ago. Nana, when it went inland into Central America, the center of circulation dissipated, but the remnant moisture moved out into the Pacific and formed Tropical Storm Julio. So it reminded me of the fact that because they mentioned this in their discussion, that they made a point to say that the center had disappeared and then the remnant moisture reformed into the tropical storm, so that if there was an intact surface circulation that they could follow all the way across and moved out into the Pacific, then they would have kept the same name. But
Really?
yes, that's how I read the way I read the discussion on their on the technical discussion for Julio when it formed. They made it a point to say that the remnants of the nano had moved across, but I think how they worded it was, but since the surface circulation had dissipated, it became a new Pacific tropical system, and they named it Julio. So that's something to remember for future
That must be a
reference.
new ruling. That must be a new ruling because I could remember at least a few storms that maintained their identity as it crossed, let's say, over
Yeah,
Central America
uh,
or into Mexico
but it
and
may
had names changed.
but
So
it
this
makes
must be
and it
something
makes
new.
sense. It makes sense to keep the same name, so you have continuity for a storm that makes you get a storm that tracks across the Caribbean, moves across, and then keeps on going into the Pacific. I think there was an instance once where one did that and then wound up hitting Hawaii or got close to Hawaii. For continuity's sake, if you can track it all the way across, you might as well keep the same name. Tropical Storm Paulette, by the way, on the 5 o'clock advisory is at 18744.3, top wind 65 miles an hour, moving northwest at 8. And they haven't really changed the forecast here. They keep it as a tropical storm right through Sunday. Take it on a mostly west or west northwest course, and then turn it northwest later in the forecast period as we get into the weekend. I'm not going to waste a whole lot of energy considering what the upper air looks like, because who knows if that's where it's going to be. And Rene, which is 16.8, 27.9, so it's now west of the Cabo Verde Islands. Top winds are still only 40 miles an hour, and you can see on the satellite it really didn't look all that healthy this evening. But it is still forecast to strengthen into a hurricane sometime later Thursday or Thursday night, and then back to a tropical storm as it turns north and then turns northeast. But again, with all the noise that's out there in the Atlantic, uh, take these forecasts with a huge grain of salt. And I'm just checking to see if the 8 o'clock outlook is out, and it is. So the tropical wave that is forecast to emerge off the African coast on Thursday now has an 80% chance of developing into a tropical cyclone over the next 5 days. And we're still, the Hurricane Center, talking about a small area of low pressure 450 miles southeast of Cape Hatteras with minimal shower and thunderstorm activity. Gradual development is possible during the next 2 or 3 days, and it could become a tropical depression while it continues to move slowly west northwest towards the South or North Carolina coast, et cetera, et cetera. A 40% chance. So no change in their outlook for the system that is off the East Coast. So, yeah, there's not too much to add here, folks. In spite of the fact that we've got these tropical systems running around, and the fact that the upper air is so unclear, the whole synoptic situation out in the Atlantic is so diffuse and so unclear that we just going to take these things day to day.
Absolutely. What else can we do?
You know
But I
what?
think you can say,
I'll tell you what we can do. We can play Briller Jeopardy.
well, I haven't, I don't think I have a question for
No, I
you.
don't either. Because he's still on vacation. He's back to
Oh,
Scott's back tomorrow. So there
okay.
so there is no Briller Jeopardy.
All right. So,
Oh my.
so it gives us a chance just to say goodbye.
Well, before we do that, we have to acknowledge that Doug Wetzel hit super chat tonight.
Yes.
And thank you so much. Smada Mott says the negative NAO has been virtually absent the last several winters. Try the last 6. We haven't seen a negative. Actually, you have to go back to see any real substantial period of a negative NAO. You have to go back at the very least to a short period in 2012, 2013. And as far as a negative NAO that lasted for most of the winter, you have to go back to the winters of 2009, 2010, and 2010, 2011. It's been, except for the occasional token appearance that it makes, it's been virtually absent for much of the last decade in the wintertime.
On the chat board, I noticed that one of our people, Dan McSwain, talking about a few years back there was a storm. He thinks it was Ivan, not sure. Hit the USA, then went back into the Atlantic, came back around and hit the USA a second time. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I believe so. Um, yeah, I'm gonna. Let me look it up in the archive. I'll take a look. Ryan Ford just hit super chat too. Ryan wants to know that
Yes.
that typhoon in the Pacific caused the pattern flip, causing all the models confusion in the Atlantic. All right, Ryan, hang on. We're gonna take a. I'll take a look in a second. There's one other comment I want to address here, and that's John Sachs 77. This is a good question. If a hurricane of historical significance develops while we're in the Greek alphabet, will that name be retired?
In other words, if this has significance and if it's Hurricane Beta, then the next time we have a storm coming around, will we automatically jump from alpha to gamma and ignore beta? Is
I
that
would
what?
imagine. I would imagine they would retire it. There's uh, there was a Hurricane Alpha, I think in the 40s or early 50s. No, not in the 40s. I think they started with the Greek alphabet naming in 1950. I think there was a Hurricane Alpha in the early 50s that was noteworthy, but they didn't retire it. The thing is, they so. I mean, we all last. The only time we used the Greek alphabet because we ran out of names was in 2005. So that was the first time we've ever done that. So this year could be the second time. I guess the fact that we use these names so infrequently. But yeah, I would imagine if it becomes a storm that's noteworthy, they would retire it. Although I don't know why they just don't keep a list of 5 or 6 other names, like sort of an alternate list that they can jump to in case
You know,
they
they
run
never
out.
had they never had to consider that, but now this is the second time in 15 years that we're probably going to have to go to the Greek alphabet. So maybe they just might want to consider, that extra list of regular names in case we this ever happens again.
Yes, that they should think about that. They should think about that seriously. All
Yes.
right, so Ryan was asking me about uh, the um, the spittoons in the Pacific, the typhoons. Hang on one second here. So I'm bringing up the European because um, you can see this very strong typhoon. Now this is going back to Saturday when it was approaching Japan as a Category 3 and then moved into China. And then actually drops south. The remnant low drops southwestward. You got to have, if you're going to have a tropical cyclone in the West Pacific that is going to impact the weather pattern downstream, it has to recurve almost either over or east of Japan and then head up toward the Gulf of Alaska. And there were a couple of typhoons there. I don't believe neither one of them wound up doing that, and certainly this one is not doing that. It's going into China, and then just all of a sudden, it just like a rocket ship, the remnant low just drops southwestward as high pressure builds in, and there's nothing out there that follows up anytime in the next 10 days. So I guess the answer to the question is no. The typhoons did not have any material impact on the overall weather pattern across North America. We continue to be in this very progressive west to east weather systems moving right along, no blocking type of pattern. So if we're going to get a tropical system that's going to impact the East Coast, even if you have the upper air set up with some blocking like we did when we had Faye and Isaias back in July and early August, um, even then you need to have the upper air just perfect to get a storm to channel in the right position uh, in the area that would impact the mid-Atlantic and Northeast. So if you have a progressive pattern, then you really have to have the upper trough time out just perfectly, because if it's moving along from west to east, the storm is going to want to make a full recurve, and maybe even a sharp recurve to the right. So unless you have some kind of deep north-south trough that sets up to our west and has enough time for the storm to kind of turn into it, it's even harder. So right now, the upper air pattern would not be favorable for bringing storms up the east coast, unless the trough timed out absolutely perfectly. And that's it. Peter Bicker. When was the last time the NAO went negative? It was negative, Peter, back in when we had Isaias and when we had Faye. There was a stretch there in mid-July to early August when the NAO was negative. It actually was off the wall negative for this time of year. But since then, it has gone off the wall positive, and it's been non-existent. Which I guess for the winter weather lovers, Joe, they're happy that it's non-existent, because I think they would rather see it pop up. And if you remember last year, we did have a pretty strong negative NAO through the month of November into early December,
That was that
and
one big storm that dropped like 20 plus inches in Albany.
right, and everybody was licking their chops, and it
And all of a
disappeared,
sudden,
and it
everything
was
went away.
never. Uh,
And it went away.
it was like a salmon. It swam upstream, spawned, and was never heard from again. Oh, good Lord. All right, so I guess we got it all covered here. Um, Tomorrow at 7 o'clock Eastern time,
We'll be here.
as will I. And of course, this show is and the morning Weather in 5 video are available as podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and any one of a number of other homes where podcasts reside. So do tune in. If you can't tune into the video, you can listen to the show when you want to get away from humanity. So check those out, and that's it. So we'll see you tomorrow.
See you then.
Good night, Mr. Rayo. Good night, everybody. Be safe.